All right, so the Indianapolis Colts return back to Lucas Oil Stadium this week for a 2-week home stretch against a 1-3 Raiders team who seemingly right now is trending in the wrong direction. Now, this, of course, is following a disappointing loss to the Rams last week, and it wasn't so much the loss that disappoints us. Of course, you always want to win, but there was a level of us. You were looking at the injuries going into that game and the fact that the Rams were at home and the receiving core with Xavier Howard and no Kenny Moore. And you were kind of looking and saying, okay, like this would seem like a week where the Colts would lose. But I think what made it so disappointing is that a lot of us kind of came out of it and said, we could have won that game, right? Like in many ways, it was defined by self-inflicted wounds. Speak of wounds, people who are watching right now, can you see this sty under my eye? I mean, you want to talk about a wound. You want to talk about a tough player inspired by Michael Pittman Jr. I'm going to play through it, but I will say it is a little painful, but that's neither here nor there. You think about last week, the 11 penalties. You think about the 10 men on the field late in that game. Of course, you think about Adonai Mitchell making the absolute play of his life before somehow screwing it up and fumbling it into the back of the end zone. These are the types of blunders that up until this point in the season, the Colts have been able to avoid. So the question coming into this week is, are the Colts closer to the team that we saw in the first 3 weeks, which was really a team that was almost devoid of mistakes, right? It's not to say you've made none, because ultimately in the NFL, like mistakes are going to happen. You're not going to play perfect. But this was a team who was playing as mistake-free as you can possibly get reasonably. Or are they a little bit closer to what we saw against the Rams? They're going to have an opportunity this week to answer those questions. My guess is that they're much closer to the team that we saw in the first 3 weeks, particularly considering when you look at the tape from this past week, it's not like there was no good, right? Like, and the fact that they were able to come close to winning that game in spite of all those mental errors is kind of something that speaks to just where this team is in terms of how good they are. Now, if they're not who we think they are, let me just say, this has nothing to do with analysis of the game. Gosh, that would be painful, right? I think a lot of us have kind of settled into the fact we finally have gotten comfortable. We finally feel some security in saying, the Colts are a good football team. So if somehow this thing were to fall apart, I mean, you know, as I always say, as Colts fans, we have suffered, right? But there would be no suffering worse than this season somehow falling apart, right? Like it would just be torture. Like there's getting waterboarded. There's, I don't know, taking an uppercut from prime Mike Tyson. And then there would be watching that happen, right? And those things would all be terrible. And they would all be torture, and I don't know which one of those would be the worst thing to experience, right? That's in no particular order. I just listed that, but that's neither here nor there. All of that said, I'll bury the lead, right? I think if the Colts are who we think they are, that they should win this game against the Raiders handily, right? You don't want to take for granted how hard it is to win in the league. The Rams just experienced that on Thursday night against a banged-up 49ers team, but there's really not much I see in the Raiders right now I mean, I don't even think Raiders fans would think that they're going to win this game. Like the Raiders are going in the wrong direction right now. This season is slowly slipping away from them, and the Colts are obviously trending upward right now. So you have two teams headed in opposite directions. Speak of the idea of banged up. Let's talk about the injuries real quick before getting into the bulk of the episode. We'll start on the Raiders side of the ball. They will be without their starting left tackle. Their offensive line has already struggled, so to not have him is a big deal. They won't have Jermaine Pratt at linebacker. It looks like they may have Eric Stokes at corner, who is kind of their best guy, which really is an indictment on the corner room of the Raiders, more so than it is anything special about Eric Stokes. And then Brock Bowers, after not practicing all week, basically, somehow is expected to play in this game. Of course, he's been compromised all season. Anyone who owns him in fantasy football knows this to be true. He even himself would say that he hasn't been separating exactly the same. But nonetheless, he's a guy that if you're a Colts fan, it's not that you hope for an injury, but you would probably kind of prefer he's not on the field if you had the option, right? You flip it to the Colts side of things. Of course, no Kenny Moore, still nursing that Achilles injury. No Tyler Goodson, I believe a groin injury. Tyler Groinson, they pulled up Amir Abdullah to kind of fill in his role, whatever limited role that might be. You have no Daniel Scott at safety with a knee injury. I believe he's played a grand total of 3 snaps for the Indianapolis Colts this year, so not much to see there. And really kind of the most surprising one is no Alec Pierce. I think most of us sort of expected that he would pass the concussion protocol, but he did not. So, of course, that opens up a conversation about the usage of Adonai Mitchell, which we will talk about during this episode. And then, of course, Xavier Howard retired midweek. I would like to say it was a surprise, but it is no surprise to me that he did not want to play football. I have now been saying for 2 weeks straight, and if you saw, as recently as Wednesday, right? Like as recently as maybe the day he retired or the day before he retired, I was saying not only can he not keep up, I'm not sure from what I'm seeing if he even wants to be out there. And as it turns out, that was true. So I'm not particularly surprised that he ultimately is out of the league, right? At all. But nonetheless, that opens up, right? Let's not harp on that, right? It opens up a conversation about the corner room and what you're going to do there. The Colts just elevated Chris Lamont, who's a very familiar face to us, from the practice squad onto the 53-man roster in a move I really like. He's kind of been reliable in a pinch for this team when they've needed him over the course of the past couple of years. You, of course, have Malachi Blackman now and Jonathan Edwards, who would kind of be your two front runners to start on the outside in favor of Xavier Howard. But the Colts have not exactly provided us with a whole lot of clarity as to who it's going to be or if it's going to be a rotation of guys. So kind of given all the moving parts there, you do have some stuff to figure out. On the offensive side of the ball, I think the Colts are going to be able to do whatever they please in this game, assuming that they don't let their guard down. It's really on the defensive side of the ball, given what I just said, and then some of kind of the potential matchups you're going to have to deal with on the offensive side of the ball from the Raiders. I think you have some potential challenges here on defense, and we're going to talk about what those are. So just a quick rundown of the topics. All timestamped, by the way. I timestamp everything. So, if you're not like a full episode type of person, you could very easily skip to exactly where it is that you want to be. We're going to talk about A.D. Mitchell and his usage and how much he should be used. We're going to talk about some simple keys to victory on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, which is really kind of the bulk of the discussion, and in my opinion, the most interesting part of the discussion, the challenges that I see for the Indianapolis Colts and kind of just some brainstorming as to how they may try to solve them. And then, of course, we'll do our parlay of the week based on the analysis of the game. Right now, we're 2 of 3 on those parlays, so not too bad. Those are the topics. Before we get into them, you know what it is. I got to introduce the show. My name is Justin. This right here is the Ride on the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone watching and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot it a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe. If you want to be a part of the journey, we're on our way to 4,000 subscribers over here on the YouTube channel. We're getting there. We're getting there. So if you keep coming back, enjoying the show, perhaps it's your first day here and you're enjoying what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button. Never miss an episode again. Of course, audio listeners, leave a 5-star review. Let the people know how much you're enjoying the show. But most importantly, be civil in the comment section. You don't know what the person on the other end of the keyboard is going through. If you disagree on something, totally fine. But we're all on the same team. Take it as an opportunity to have a discussion, maybe even change someone's mind, but do it in a way that, we respect one another, right? That's what we try to do over here. We try to have like objective conversation about the Colts. We try to have in-depth conversation about the Colts. And as much as we like to lean into the emotion, because that's the nature of being a fan, we do like to make sure it doesn't cloud our analysis on things, right? So that's kind of the overall goal of what we're trying to do. But without further ado, let's kind of get back into what it is that we need to talk about. And I'm going to start on the A.D. Mitchell side of things, particularly only because, quite frankly, I don't think I would have talked about it again. But because Alec Pierce isn't playing, you have something to discuss there. And Shane Steichen has been having some fun with the media this week, in my opinion. Kind of pretending that he won't play, like we're working through that. A.D. Mitchell is going to play, okay? To what degree, I don't know. I, of course, can see, as many of you can see, Ashton Doolin cutting into his snaps. By the way, Ashton Doolin technically is A.D. also, right? Ashton Doolin, those are the initials. But Adonai, I think, is still going to find his way onto the field, and I think he could potentially make an impact against this Raiders team if he gets targeted, which is always the case, by the way. I mean, right now you look at the catch rate for the numbers nerds. I think he's at like 58%, but also you look at the stats again and you say, okay, in terms of catchable targets, whatever that means, he's gotten 7 this year and he has 7 catches. So that would be 100% in that regard and no drops. So good on him, right? Some of you want him benched. Some of you want him cut. Benched, I can see as reasonable, or at least a reduced snap count. Cutting him, though, absolute insanity, and of course not something the Colts are going to do. And, the play from last week, it feels like the worst thing ever in the moment because this is a week-to-week league, and of course we're watching, and of course we lose, and we're emotional. But in actuality, shit happens, right? Like, it's part of the league. We've seen great players do something very similar. Like, some people will tell you that never happens. It does happen. It doesn't happen often. It doesn't make it acceptable when it does. But yeah, JT did it last year. Deshaun Jackson did it, right? How about Jerry Rice, 1986? Fumbles it into the end zone on a breakaway touchdown against the Giants in the playoffs, completely unprovoked, right? Now, don't get me wrong. It wasn't due to a celebration or anything like that. And he was coming off a 1,500-yard season, so it's not a one-to-one comparison. But my point of bringing it up is simply these types of things do happen in the NFL. Not acceptable. Doesn't mean you just tolerate it, but you also can't rewind it and take it back. It happens, and that's it. The moment doesn't have to define AD Mitchell. I think really it can be a coming of age moment. I think it will be a coming of age moment for him. And the reason I have so much confidence in him is that he has the hardest part of playing wide receiver down in the NFL, right? Like getting open, catching the football, right? All the things that require the real talent and kind of the things that are hard to translate from college to the NFL, the route running, the nuance in that. He has all of those things down pat right now. What a lot of people, though, mistake for him kind of being a head case in terms of like the mental side of things, which is where he definitely needs to work on. I see a guy that cares, right? I see a guy that wants to be great. And when you're that passionate, once you're able to rein that in, if you're able to rein that in, it can be a superpower for you and kind of turn you into the type of guy that can energize a team on any given moment. And at 22 years of age, you have a guy in Adonai Mitchell. I would rather have that, right? I would rather have his level of passion and you have to rein it in as opposed to someone who's like apathetic, right? Like, and in terms of accountability, what that looks like, that doesn't really need to be seen by us, the fan base, right? Like, I'm sure they let him hear it. Shane Steichen said he met with them. Of course, he spoke in front of the team, as we heard. So, I mean, what are you going to do? Like, I know some people would say, how long can you possibly tolerate this? I don't know. How about his fucking rookie contract, right? Like, how about his rookie contract? Ultimately, that's what that contract is for, to make sure or to find out whether or not you deserve a second one, right? So I don't see the Colts really doing anything with Adonai Mitchell other than continuing to try to develop him, right? And to develop him, you have to give him a chance moving forward. You have to give him a chance to move on from this. It's the middle of the season. You're not going to probably find a better option. And quite frankly, I don't think he's going to do that again. So when you're talking about Adonai Mitchell, I would just be careful to not hold him to a standard that is higher than the one you would hold yourself to, right? Like, have you ever made a mistake at your job before? And if so, were you just immediately fired for it, or did you expect some level of grace, right? Because ultimately you've been showing up, doing the work, all of that stuff. And before you say, oh, it's been multiple mistakes for Adonai Mitchell, people are acting like playing in the NFL is as simple as scooping the fries and putting them into the bag, right? This is a young man that's maturing in the spotlight. And anyone who has played an organized team sport knows that you don't handle a situation like this by just shitting on the guy and just giving up on him, right? You do the opposite. You try to raise him up. You try to empower him, and you let him know that you have his back, but also you let him know that it can't continue. And then if it does continue, you have something else to talk about. But again, I don't think he'll do that again. And in fact, I could promise you he won't do that specific thing again. Now, for the actual game preview, sorry to make you wait so long, but that kind of turned into a little bit more than I expected it to be. Offensively, I'll keep it very simple for the sake of time. If you're the Colts, you just have to continue to do what you've done all year. Don't fix what ain't broken. Like, of course, you have to protect the football, but I don't really see a world where the Colts don't score 27 plus points in this one. And I really just don't think there's much more analysis to it than that, right? There's no need to overcomplicate it. The Raiders are thin in the secondary. They're thin at linebacker. They allowed 41 points to a Marcus Mariota led Washington team. Marcus Mariota, by the way, stinks. He's terrible. You want to talk about another guy I'm not sure wants to play football? He's one of them, but that's neither here nor there. You really have a middle of the pack defense here in the Raiders, and then you have a high powered offense in the Indianapolis Colts. And when you're the Colts and you look at this defense, the only person you really need to plan around is Max Crosby, which in fairness is easier said than done. He's one of the great players this league has to offer, right? But offensively, I'm not worried about the Colts in this game at all, right? Like if they lose this game, it won't be because of that side of the ball. Defensively, though, that's where I do think you have some discussion points. And really, it kind of starts with Brock Bowers, even though he's been compromised. You got to have a plan for how to stop him. Now, I think the easy answer for most people to say would be, oh, man, you got to get a safety on him as opposed to the linebacker because of how good he's able to move around, right? That's where I think it gets a little bit muddy because I'm not sure it's that simple. Your safeties, if you're the Colts, of course, are Nick Cross and Cam Bynum. Outside of Brock Bowers, this offense is one that has Jacoby Myers, who's a very, very underrated receiver in this league. And then you have the running game, which was really awful for them up until last week. But of course, we know the talent that Ashton Genty brings to the table. So you don't want to take for granted that perhaps they haven't found their groove there. You have Trey Tucker on the offense as well, who's a weapon, a speedster, someone they like to involve in a lot of different ways. They like to involve him down the field on reverses in the short passing game. So he's sort of an X factor in this offense. Well, all right. Now you have a lot of different things to worry about. Jacoby Myers, fine. Okay. You can basically just put Ward on him if you wanted to and call it a day. Not sure that's what they'll do, but it's one way to approach it. We know that the Colts like to bring Nick Cross down into the box when playing against the run, particularly if the other team starts to get it going. So in theory, that would remove Nick Cross as an option to cover Cam Bynum, or rather Nick Cross as an option to cover Brock Bowers. And then now it leaves you with only Cam Bynum. But as I said, you had Trey Tucker, who's a deep threat, and a collection of unproven corners around him on the outside, right? So presumably Bynum, as we've seen him do so often this year, is going to play that deep middle safety, right? He's going to try to be that center fielder. He's going to make sure that they have protection over the top of the field. And you're probably going to want him in many situations to help out on the outside with Trey Tucker against whoever it is that's against him, or with Jacoby Myers in the case, basically whoever Ward isn't covering. You're going to want to make sure Cam Bynum is helping that guy out. My allergy is just on another level right now, but that's, who cares, right? So when you look at it and you look at all of those things, it does now put you in a spot. Okay, it was easy to say have a safety on Bowers, but now once I lay it out, you say, all right, who is going to cover Bowers? How do you do that, right? And it also begs the question, are you going to rely on matchups, or are you just going to try to confuse Geno Smith, who has really made a number of mistakes with the football this year? Like, he's the type of guy, when you want to talk about making a bad decision, putting a ball into danger, Geno Smith can be had. So that's the chess matchup you have on the defensive side of the ball right now. If I'm to take a guess, if I'm Lou Anarumo, I'm probably going to take my chances on getting Jonathan Edwards on Brock Bowers when I could find that matchup. This is a guy, he's kind of your biggest corner, really. 6'1", 200 pounds, long arms, played 3 snaps all of last week, but all 3 were on third down, one of which was a huge pass breakup against tight end Tyler Higbee. But the balance for the team is going to kind of be trying to find out, how can you limit Brock Bowers' impact within this offense while not compromising your ability to defend the run or allow a big play over the top? That's what makes a tight end so dangerous. It's part of the reason that Tyler Warren has been such a difference maker for the Colts on the offensive side of the football, right? So that's what's going on the defensive side of the ball. I don't have the answers. I'm just pointing out, even though this offense hasn't exactly been great this year, this isn't such a simple task for the Colts defense, particularly when you take into account sort of the shuffling of corners that they have on this team. You're just kind of trying to figure out who's going to match up with who. Like, I think Blackman has a good chance against Turner, or Tucker rather, because of the speed, right? But again, we just don't know what it's going to be. We're going to have to see, and then we could come back and kind of talk about what it is that they did. Overall, I think you have a pretty convincing win here for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to go with 31-20 for the Colts. The spread is 6.5 in favor of Indy. Now, we're going to hit our parlay of the week, as we always do. Based on that, we're going to keep it nice and simple. We're going to take the Colts money line. We're going to take Jonathan Taylor anytime touchdown, and we're going to take Jonathan Taylor. I'm going 80-plus rushing yards in this game, but I think you could go 100-plus and probably get away with that. I tend to be on the conservative side. On FanDuel, this is plus 31 odds. As always, I'll be waiting till Sunday to get my 30% profit boost, my sweat-free bet, my 50% profit boost, whatever it is that they give me. I'll be able to get a little more out of this bet than that. Colts money line, Jonathan Taylor anytime touchdown, and Jonathan Taylor 80-plus rushing yards. And I think we'll be happy 4-1 Monday morning. But, of course, we're going to have to see. But until next time, my name is Justin. This right here was the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. And as always, go Colts.